Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 45 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long, and we are coming to you once again from the worldwide headquarters of GSM Services right here in downtown Gastonia, as we look forward to having some great discussions in the coming weeks and months. We simply believe in discussing more of the reasons why Gaston's great. We're highlighting another great organization this week and have Heather Kauffman and Debbie Gulledge with us. Heather is the program manager from the Lighthouse Children's Advocacy Center, and Debbie is an assistant district attorney here in Gaston County. Heather and Debbie, it's great to have you on, and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So we're going to get right to it and maybe start with you. Heather, if you don't mind, just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself. Anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I'm a wife, a mom of a 6-year-old daughter, and I was born and raised here in Gaston County. Doesn't seem like there's many of us left, so definitely one of the ones that was born and raised here.
Very good. Debbie, what about you?
Married, I have 2 kids. I am one of the transplants to Gaston County. I primarily grew up in Charlotte, but I've been with the DA's office for a little over 16 years.
So you couldn't get over here quick enough, is that?
Exactly.
Okay.
As soon as I had an opportunity, I jumped right over the river.
All right. Well, very good. We appreciate you sharing that. And Heather, I'm also a lifelong Gastonian. So there are plenty of us, I think, here around, hopefully staying around. So maybe, Heather, kind of go back to you, kind of maybe combine these couple of questions. Just tell us a little bit about the Lighthouse Center and Advocacy Center, and then how did you get involved with it, and just kind of any history, anything you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, so personally, I've really always been interested in forensic work, and then kind of fell in love with social work. Started with child welfare, and then had the opportunity to become the program manager here at the Lighthouse Children's Advocacy Center. So the Lighthouse is a nationally accredited children's advocacy center. And you'll find, they're shortened to kind of CACs. You'll find CACs across the nation. And it's a model that's really designed to reduce trauma to children, child victims of physical abuse, sexual abuse, and other crimes. And it's really a team model. So we work very closely with all of our partners in law enforcement, child welfare, prosecutors, mental health providers, and really just kind of wrap all the services around the children to reduce their trauma and assist in the investigation and prosecution. Okay,
that's a big task, or it feels like it, from this novice over here who doesn't know a lot about that, about your world. So, Debbie, can you how did you get involved? What's your connection, and just with the Advocacy Center as well?
Sure. So I am a felony prosecutor here in Gaston County. So I prosecute every kind of felony from minor drug offenses up through homicide cases. And when I started doing work with...
So I don't want to see you, in other words.
No, you don't want to see me. No, on either side. It means something terrible's happened in your life, or you've done something terrible as well. But when I started prosecuting, particularly child sex offenses, I became more involved with what was the CAC at that point in time. It's had a bit of a tough history here in Gaston County until 4 or 5 years ago, and Heather can give you more details about that specifically. But that's when I started going and participating with the multidisciplinary team meetings and doing everything I could to try and help the center be successful. It's the absolute best model for our child victims in terms of trying to give them a safe space to share their stories about what happened to them, and have services in place to help them with their healing journey after they've experienced such terrible traumas. Okay,
so occasionally there are topics that we discuss here that sometimes we try to make light of things going on in the community, but this is like so many topics that are in so much important work that goes on. This is one of those things that is so it's so unfortunately I'm sure it's so needed. So Heather, can you kind of go in a little more detail? She mentioned maybe some tough history, and I noticed when I did some research yesterday, part of an organization maybe called, am I saying this right? Hope United? Is that correct? Did I say?
Correct. So historically, the Gaston County has had a children's advocacy center, and for a variety of reasons, just wasn't able to kind of stay stay afloat. As you can imagine, a lot of it's grant funding and different situations. So the Gaston County government actually took over kind of responsibility for the Children's Advocacy Center back in 2015, and we reopened as the Lighthouse in 2016, and are now part of a department that is called Hope United Survivor Network, which covers survivor services all the way from childhood through elder abuse. So really kind of wrapping all survivor services in Gaston County, including child abuse, elder abuse, sexual assault, domestic violence under one department, and there's a few different programs that serve each of those individual populations.
Okay, so you earlier you kind of went through, I think it sounded like the specific mission of the organization, and I'm not sure this question is worded right, but what are some of the initiatives, programs, again, whatever the best way to word that? I mean, what are some of the things you guys are doing specifically on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so the Children's Advocacy Center model is designed that kind of the first contact with the family and child is likely when a forensic interview is needed. And that forensic interview is a guided conversation with a child to allow them the safe place and allow for their disclosure to come out in their words. So while that forensic interview is taking place, the family is also, as you can imagine, in crisis over this disclosure. And so they're getting advocacy support. They're getting attached to a family advocate that can really wrap their arms around them, give them services, assist them on what the next days and weeks look like ahead. And then we provide on-site trauma therapy. So we have trauma therapy services for children and for parents. Educational services. We have a few fun programs. One is called Celebrate, and so each kid that graduates from their trauma therapy has a big graduation celebration. We also have a program called Kara's Closet, and that's a room makeover project. So if a child were victimized in their room or in a room that they commonly go to, we could do a room makeover. So we have donations, and the community really likes to get behind that one on just reducing those trauma triggers. So it's little things that, a child shouldn't have to go back to sleep.
But just changing the environment a little bit, is
Absolutely.
that a fair
Absolutely.
description? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great program. My mom and I actually had a wonderful time decorating and redoing a room for a little girl who had come through the CAC, ultimately a case that we weren't in a position to be able to prosecute, which unfortunately happens sometimes. But what a great idea to be able to give the kid a whole new space where they don't think about all the bad things that have happened to them every time they try and close their eyes and go to bed.
Yeah, I can't say I could imagine. Actually, I can't imagine, right? But I would have tried to imagine that would be pretty traumatic, and that's a tough word to use. Have to use for children, especially. You shouldn't have to put the word traumatic and children together. Debbie, I mean, on a day-to-day basis for you, I mean, what are you? Are you referring people to the Advocacy Center? I mean, what specifically in your day-to-day are you doing with in conjunction with the Lighthouse?
So I don't refer cases to the Lighthouse. Kids that need to be interviewed are referred either through social services and child protective services or through law enforcement if police reports are made. What our involvement on a regular basis, number one, we're reviewing interviews that are being done at the Children's Advocacy Center, working with law enforcement, trying to build evidence in cases, figure out what we can do that way. My office is also a, hopefully Heather thinks, active teammates on our multidisciplinary team. We meet twice a month. We discuss pending cases. It's a very kind of open table conversation, very much centered around what can we do to try and help this child as much as possible. So we meet a couple of times a month, go over those cases, brainstorm, really try and bring in the best from all the agencies who are involved to try and come up with the very best possible outcome for those kids. Beyond that, we've got some amazing folks who work for the CAC who are able to provide us with expert witness testimony if necessary. A lot of times when kids disclose things that have happened to them, it doesn't happen exactly the way you think it would. A lot of people who haven't had this sort of experience or this sort of education think about what they see in movies. And, oh, well, if a kid's talking about all these terrible things that have happened, they're going to be sobbing and crying and barely able to get the words out. it's not always the case. Every kid responds differently. The way those disclosures come out happens differently. And sometimes we need some really good professional folks to come in and help explain to our jurors that it's not quite what Hollywood makes you think it is.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they help us that way as well.
You mean Hollywood might not be real life?
I know, it's not real.
Sorry.
Don't tell them I said that.
Maybe I shouldn't go there. So thank you for that. And this question is for both of you, and you've shared a couple of examples already, and I like this question, but are there some specific examples or a story or, an anecdotal story where I'm sure you have many where you've helped an individual, a family, or something that you can kind of share a success story? I'm not sure success story and trauma go together, but anything either one of you can share?
Absolutely. I think one of the best stories that really just kind of helps people wrap their head around what we do is we had this brown-haired, green-eyed little girl who came in, as she was approaching, kind of standing behind her mom and dad, just kept saying, I'm scared. And then we conducted the forensic interview process. We have a very child-friendly environment. So we did everything that we do kind of on that end. And she walked back into the waiting area with her parents, and they asked, how are you? How was it? And she said, I just feel free.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I'll leave that one alone. Wow. Okay. Debbie, anything you would like to add to that, or is that?
I can't do better than that.
Yeah.
That's what we hope for all of the kids who come through, is that in giving them a safe space to share what's happened to them, that we can help take away some of that burden that they've been carrying and help set them up for a happy and healthy and wonderful future that every child's entitled to have.
Yeah, this is a question that we shared with you guys beforehand, and I'm almost afraid to hear the answer. Typically, how many kids are you seeing monthly? I'm not, whatever.
So in 2021, we served 452 children.
That's why I didn't want to ask that question.
We've seen a large increase already this year. February was our busiest month since we've opened in 2016.
Like so many things, we've had more than one group on talking about different things, mental health. We had the Chowdhury family on talking about opioids, and everything like that has increased in the last 2 years. I mean, are you seeing that as well? And do you relate that to what the country or the world has experienced in the last 2 years, or?
So I think there's
or is there more to?
I think there's a little bit more to it.
Sure.
So,
yeah. Don't let me oversimplify something. Yeah.
So we had kind of this situation where, as we were in a shutdown with the pandemic, children weren't having access to the people that they might report to. So as you can imagine, children find safe adults to talk to, and a lot of that was taken away. So with school being out, people not visiting extended family as much, I think we're going to continue to see this increase for likely at least this next year and maybe even the next, as children are back engaged in services or just places where they can talk to safe adults and continue normalcy, or a pre-pandemic normalcy.
Hopefully as close to that normal as we will get back to. Of course, I'm hoping that we get back to that. So I'm trying to wrap my head around 450 plus in 1 year. That's what you said, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I expected, but I don't think I expected to hear 450. Up to what age?
So we generally serve youth from the time that they're verbal, so about age 2.5 is kind of the youngest that we have served in a forensic interview capacity, up until 18.
Okay. So while I'm thinking about it, you've got the website was really good. I actually like the video. With the 2 or 3 minute video that's on there, that really just gave me my small mind a real good snapshot of what you guys doing. But so you mentioned through the Advocacy Center is through a certain age. We're going to stay. Obviously, this is the topic for today. But there were 2 other organizations on Hope United. Wasn't the shelter one?
Correct. The Kathy Mabry Cloninger Center, right. and then the Hope United Survivor Network Family Justice Center model.
Okay. Just for our listeners out there, if you go to the website, you'll see that, and maybe that might be a couple more episodes. I just heard Heather say. So kind of, just shift gears a little bit, in your guys' time at the Advocacy Center, what, maybe go to you, Debbie, what are you most proud of accomplishing, or your association with the organization, or what you've seen? What are you most proud of?
Right now, the strides that this center has made and the time that it has had the support of the county has been phenomenal. One of the most exciting things, and I don't want to take this away from Heather, but I think we're all, I'm going to steal it anyway.
You can make her have a more difficult answer. That's okay.
One of the very most exciting things that's going on right now is there's actually a new center that's being built on South New Hope Road.
Okay.
Right now, the Lighthouse is operating out of the basement of the Highland Health Center.
Okay.
Which we've been very grateful to have that space for sure. We have a big space where we can meet for our MDT meetings, and we can do them in person, which has been tricky over the past couple of years.
Sure.
There's a small interview room, there's a small family room. But with those numbers she was mentioning just a minute ago, 451 kids and their families coming through the center last year, it's not enough space. So anybody who's driven down South New Hope, they're near City Church. You'll see some construction underway, and that is going to be the new, huge, fabulous, wonderful Children's Advocacy Center.
Oh, wow. Well, that's terrific. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
Well, good for you.
Very excited about that, for sure.
Well, Heather, did she steal your thunder, or did we stump you with something else? Now I have to make you answer that question differently.
Yeah, so we are certainly very excited and very proud of the build, but I think for me, it's more the partnerships and the great work that the staff have put in for years. We serve a lot of kids, and whether we serve them out of a basement or a brand new facility, the care and attention and partnerships that we have built really mean the most to that kid. By having great partnerships with social services, law enforcement, other mental health agencies in the community, kids know when you're genuine, and the care and attention that you can put into them, regardless of what building you're in, really shows. And I think that's what I'm the most proud of. Very, very excited to be able to grow and continue to do the work in the brand new facility. But I'm beyond proud of the partners that we work with and all of the staff day in and day out.
So how many staff do you have?
Yeah, so I have 6 staff.
Okay.
And that varies from family advocates, mental health providers, to forensic interviewers.
And it sounds like there's a lot of collaboration also with other individuals, agencies. What about volunteers? Do you have any volunteers, or is this too sensitive of a situation where you might not do that?
Yeah, so we have certainly utilized volunteers, and I think that ability and program will continue to grow as we're in our larger space. In the current space, it's pretty small, pretty tight, but certainly, people don't think about things like sanitizing toys in between, 452 kids coming in, raising awareness. April is actually Child Abuse Prevention Month, and so we have a few fun things going on, and things like that volunteers can help with. Really just spreading the word. This is a program that a lot of people don't know about unless they need it. So the more people out there that are connected in some way, a lot of the Girl Scouts groups, donate stuffed animals to us. We give a stuffed animal to every kid that comes through.
Okay.
So there's lots of fun ways that kids, adults, families can participate even if they can't get into the building.
Okay, well, thank you. You mentioned just a few minutes ago that I'm not sure how you worded it now because I'm getting old and I can't remember 2 minutes ago, Elizabeth. But you mentioned that children can kind of sniff out that if you're not genuine, right? And as a parent of 3, I think one of the worst realizations I came to is how my children were paying attention to my actions and what I was doing more than what I was saying. And so, that was a tough one to come to terms with because, I thought they just listened to me and, that's not how it works. But they definitely could sniff out when I was not on top of my game, so to speak, which was very often when they were younger, especially. So again, this is another question for both of you. What, besides a great world we could live in where an organization like this wouldn't be needed, I think that would be maybe the dream for a lot of the organizations we've talked to, right? Is that everything's so swell that not needed. But Heather, what do you envision the organization looking like in 5 to 10 years? And you obviously, we've already stolen your new building answer, so you have to go deeper than that.
Yeah, so I think what separates us though is that we are here to talk about a topic that a lot of people don't like to think about or talk about. So I think with the expanded services that we will be able to have in the new building, increased efforts in prevention and education to the overall community, and really just being an overall staple in our community. If somebody wants to know how to start talking to their child about body safety or a basic conversation on private parts can be difficult for parents to start to have. So just knowing that we have this resource, we're happy to help talk about internet safety, human trafficking prevention. We have several curriculums, trainings that we can do with adults, with kids, suggestions on how parents can have these conversations. So really just being recognized in the community over time, that as people are starting to have these conversations, they know that we're here.
It can be, unfortunately, a scary world. And I think I know as a parent, I often found myself thinking, well, that's not going to happen here, or that's going to happen to somebody else's family. And that's just not, the reality is some of these things can just happen to anyone at any day. So from an educational standpoint, what does that look like? I mean, are you involved with the schools at all? Is it other organizations? Just, again, my ignorance there.
Yeah, so kind of on the education piece, just something that I think is important for everybody to know is that 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused before their 18th birthday, and over 90% of the perpetrators are somebody that's known to the child and family. So we do try to get that message out. We have what's called Darkness to Light, which is a child sexual abuse prevention program. It's a 2-hour free program. Happy to teach that to anyone who works with children, anyone who has children. It covers a lot of these things we've talked about on the statistics and how they can start having the conversation, how they can recognize and respond to children if they disclose to them. We do have a body safety program within Gaston County Schools. Okay. So 3rd grade students receive the ability to go into a class that's called Play It Safe, and it teaches body safety, also covers some bullying and other topics, a little bit of information about online safety, what kids are sharing over video games. Lots of those topics. We do have what's called Blind Spot, which is a program that's designed for teens, and it goes much more into the internet safety and human trafficking prevention education.
Is it fair to say, so I'm 51, so I think I know the answer to this, but is it fair to say that the individuals who might be in front of Debbie on occasion is it easier access to children now because of the internet, social media? I mean, it just seems like the kids, and I mean, I've been involved in my church, our youth. I coach kids, my kid for about 12 years through our First Methodist sports program. It just seems like they're exposed to more sooner than maybe I was, back in the dark ages.
Absolutely, and I think what we have seen is that perpetrators always change and grow over time, and find the ways to have that access. So whether it's in person, virtual, or lots of new creative ways, we can't even keep up with all the new apps that are.
That's
out
unfortunate, but yes. So from your perspective, Debbie, I mean, what would you say? Looking 5 to 10 years down the road, how's that collaboration or relationship might change, or just what from your view?
Oh, I hope our collaboration continues to grow. I hope we continue to have so many active partnerships within all of the mental health agencies and police departments, having an expansion of the educational services that Heather was talking about so that we can reach as many people as possible, because it really does help to know what you're looking for parents to try and catch some of these things early.
Right.
And like you mentioned, like Heather said, as the world continues to grow, as access to these kids continues to occur in such easy ways, everything that we can do to help educate parents, to help educate kids about how to keep themselves safe, keep their kids safe, having those opportunities for that education growing over the next 5 to 10 years, I think is going to be wonderful for this community.
Yeah, it feels like to me that each generation of parents becomes naive about something that their kids are aware of or involved with. I know my parents sure worried about probably what music I was listening to or whatever, but they didn't also, they didn't have to worry about me carrying around this little computer in my pocket that had access to so many things. And I know as a parent, I'm sure my wife and I are probably naive about some of the things our kids have been exposed to, which is, kind of scary. But being a parent's scary to begin with.
That's true.
So this has been really good. And obviously we're going to swing back and make sure we don't miss anything and on how to help, but get more information and volunteer. But is there any questions I haven't asked, anything I haven't asked that I should have asked, or anything else you'd like to share before we try to shift gears a little bit, and then we'll come back, of course, and finish with your to make sure everything's clear on your organization? Anything I haven't asked or?
No, I think just really, I know I mentioned that April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, but I think that really gives us an opportunity to raise our awareness. And so our Facebook page is a great way to kind of see what we have going on, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later as well. But we have pinwheel gardens going on, lots of things that the community is going to see in April.
Okay. Debbie, anything you would add to that? Or
No, it's the center's got a wonderful online presence, so absolutely follow and see what's coming up.
All right, so we're going to get away from some of these, I won't say depressing statistics that Heather has been sharing, but we're going to shift gears. And, this is a podcast about Gaston's Great. And, like I mentioned early on in this episode, sometimes we do have to talk about topics in order, to get people more aware of the things going on. But we do have good things going around in Gaston County. And we're going to shift gears to these weekly questions that we ask on the podcast. And this week, we're just going to call it, I try to come up with a new name every week, but we're just going to call it the Gaston County Speed Round of Questions. And this is what your friends and family, all your team at the center, everybody is wanting to know about both of you. Okay? This is extremely important. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right, Heather, we'll start with you. What is your favorite Tony's ice cream flavor?
Black walnut. My grandmother used to make a black walnut cake, and it just reminds me of it every time I have it.
Wow. 45 episodes now, and I think that's the first time we have heard that answer. I knew this was going to be a special episode. Debbie, what about you?
I like the chocolate chip cookie dough. Don't like chocolate chip cookies, but I like the cookie dough ice cream.
Yeah, that's actually been a much more popular answer than I expected. So chocolate chip cookie dough. Debbie, stay with you. Sundrop or Cheerwine?
Do I really have to answer that?
You have to answer something.
So my answer would be neither.
Okay.
I grew up with a Yankee mom, so I drink unsweet tea, and that's about it. I know, are you going to kick me out right now?
Or crickets or something. Yeah, when we're in the South and somebody says unsweet tea,
I know.
I'll break out in hives or have some kind of, I don't know. I'm rethinking this episode completely now, Debbie.
I'm sorry.
I'll make you happier.
Okay. Heather, how about you?
So mine is actually a homemade cherry lemon sundrop. Homemade cherry lemon sundrop. And
are we getting ready to share how to make this for the first time, or is it a family secret that you'll have to kill us if you tell us?
No, just any place that makes them homemade. Add in the sundrop,
okay. I'm sorry. I thought you meant you had some secret recipe. I got you.
Just a good old-fashioned cherry lemon sundrop. I actually went to school at UNC Wilmington, and the sundrop from there is not bottled from here. It was bottled out of Texas, so it had a completely different flavor. So we would load my car up every time I would come home and take real sundrop back to Wilmington.
Texas sundrop bottled in Texas? That doesn't sound like something's wrong with that.
Sounds worse than unsweet tea.
Yeah, actually it does. Heather, favorite local restaurant?
So I've got lots. We always, my husband and I actually don't usually visit chain restaurants. We usually always try to support somewhere local. But my go-to right now, as Debbie mentioned, we're down in the basement of Highland Health Center, is actually Ram's Kitchen. Ram's Kitchen.
So next week, not tomorrow, but next week's episode, right, is Ram's Kitchen. We had them on. That was terrific. And I had to admit, and I still haven't been there, but yeah, I've seen multiple programs. I hear it's a terrific place. Debbie, what about you?
We like the restaurants in Belmont. There's so many good places there.
Sure.
So the Lodge is one where my kids will happily eat dinner. So that's usually
the
what
Lodge is
what,
great.
what directs
I've been to the Lodge
us
more than once. Yeah, it's really good.
Where the kids will eat, we're happy to be there.
Yeah, if you keep the kids, I have 3 kids when they were younger, if you keep them calm and seated and just a few minutes of quiet and a meal together is great. Debbie, favorite outdoor activity in Gaston County, or a favorite park, or favorite thing you like to do around Gaston County?
My favorite outdoor activity, I'm a horseback rider, and my daughter is too. So that's our favorite outdoor activity, and lots of great places to ride in the area. Favorite park, my goodness, there could be any of them. The ones that my kids call the Castle Park down there. I think it's Martha Rivers.
Yeah,
and
Martha Rivers, yep.
Yep,
That's
we
great.
like Davis Park in Belmont, and you kind of can't go wrong just about anywhere you go.
I agree, very good. Thank you. Heather, what about you on that question?
Yeah, so ours is probably visiting the Whitewater Center and really kind of frequenting any of the Belmont parks. You can find us there most weekends.
Okay, yeah, very good. Yeah, the Whitewater Center is another one that comes up quite a bit. So here's the question that I ask because I can, and I may modify it slightly with some little inside information I just heard. So, Heather, I'll start with you. UNC Duke, NC State, or UNCW?
So I'm going to say this one for my husband. Go Pitt.
That's not even, are they even in the ACC? Cricket? You got some crickets over there? Okay. So, as in the Panthers. Pitt Panthers out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Correct.
I'm assuming he's where he went to school.
He did, and I have just never really followed college sports, so I'll say that one for him.
Yeah, as a traditional ACC guy, I struggle with Pitt being in the ACC. So I was trying to throw you a bone there when you mentioned the Seahawks. So we're going to move on, but good for him. I mean, I'm kidding. You know, half of what I say is a joke or a lame joke in most cases. Debbie, what about you?
So even though I attended UNC for law school, I am a Duke fan. Married a Duke fan, and he converted me, and now we've got 2 little Blue Devils running around in the house too.
This episode.
See, now I'm really going to get kicked out. Unsweet Tea and Duke, they're gonna.
Yeah, and UNC connection. So, wow.
I just use them for their cheap education.
Very good. All right. So, Debbie, what is something very few people know about you?
So, in my basement, I have a small workshop, and I have a lathe, and I like to do wood turning as an activity.
That's fantastic. Mm-hmm. Lathes are terrific. I will never forget working on a lathe in my mechanical engineering senior lab. We had so much fun with that thing. That is definitely a first answer for that question on the podcast. That's terrific. Top that, Heather.
Well, mine's not nearly as interesting, but most people that know me know that I can have a very type A personality. So I think something surprising is that very few people know is I do not make my bed. I never make my bed. I'm going to assume that more people would say that than you would probably think. Luckily, everybody at my house is asleep when I leave most days, so I can use that as an excuse, right, for not making my bed. There's a great book that I think I've used it as one of my book examples. I may not have yet, but I'm going to there's a great book by Admiral William McRaven called Make Your Bed. So that would be the anti-Heather book, I'm going to assume. All right. Speaking of that, Heather, a recent book or blog or article you follow or something you would recommend to our listeners? Yeah, one of my favorites is A Piece of Cake by Cupcake Brown.
A Piece of Cake by Cupcake Brown. Okay. I'm assuming that's a book, not a...
It is.
Okay.
It is. And I will add a disclaimer of we have discussed what my job is. So it can be a difficult book to read, but
Understood.
it's a good one.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Debbie?
So one that I'm just about finished reading that I've really been enjoying, and I'm terrible with authors, so I don't remember, but it's called The Rifle. which it's a Marine veteran who engages in a journey to learn more about his family and their war service. He purchases an M1 Garand rifle and then goes around and starts talking to World War II veterans.
Oh, wow.
Having an opportunity to record some of their stories, and then they all sign his rifle as they go through. And it's been, my own grandfather served, great uncle served, and it's really been a very interesting read.
Oh, I'm sure it would be. Wow. Okay. I appreciate you sharing both of those. And listen, we appreciate you indulging us on those Gaston County questions. It's always, for me, it's always good to hear people's favorites around the county and some of these interesting stories, about, unsweet tea and these other things that we don't do around here south of the Mason-Dixon line. But so, Heather, I'll come back to you, and this is a, kind of question I remember. This is a podcast about Gaston County. So besides the Lighthouse Children's Advocacy Center, why would you say Gaston is such a great place?
Yeah, so for me, it's really the people, the support, and just a great place for us to raise our family.
I agree.
Can't say enough good things.
That's a popular, common answer. So the people are terrific. Debbie, how would you answer that question?
I think Heather stole my answer that time.
That's why it's better sometimes to be asked first, right?
It is. No, I think the people is the definite answer. I think with what we do, we have an opportunity to see some of the worst parts of humanity. But we also have a chance to see the strength and the resilience and the amazing fighting spirit that people have to help each other and to make the world a better place.
How do you find, some of the things I'm sure you guys deal with, how do you find the hope for these kids going forward? I mean, I know that's kind of a just off the cuff question, but what helps you, see that there is going to be a better day for these kids? Or is that just a silly off the wall question?
No, so we actually, kind of our tagline is we're a place of healing and hope. Okay. And this is our piece of this puzzle. We are offering them hope, and we see the hope in their eyes, and we see the resiliency. We see the healing happen. If we're not part of that puzzle, then we don't get to see it. So this is our piece.
Yeah, my experience with children in a lot of different ways is, I don't know, I think sometimes they're more resilient than many adults, more naturally resilient than many adults. Many adults have just their life experience to a certain age has gotten to where maybe they've lost hope, and I think for the most part kids have not experienced that yet. So am I crazy to say that, or is that kind of your experience as well, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. I think kids are more resilient than all of us sitting at this table.
That's probably true. I know they are more resilient than I am. So Debbie, I'll start with you on this last question. Looking back a few years, just a couple of years, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
It sounds so cliche, but I think the idea of really not worrying about the small things, really get upset and fight for the things that warrant it, let the small things pass, and that sort of perspective that I have now, more years later than I want to admit, I think that would have been really handy when I was 20.
Oh, yeah, when I was 20, the small things seemed just so dramatic. I mean, looking back now, it's like, geez, that was ridiculous. So thank you for that. Heather, how would you answer that question?
Yeah, I think to my 20-year-old self, it would just be that things don't have to be perfect. Kind of slow down and enjoy things as they come up, and just take a minute to pause.
Is that tough for a Type A personality?
It's very tough.
I'm going to say that's a good one for a Type A personality. How would y'all here at GSM describe me? Is Joel the Type A and I'm the Type whatever? Yeah. Elizabeth is going to refrain from answering. You're going to take the fifth, right? Is that what that means? You might incriminate yourself. All right, guys, this has really been good, and I'm sure our listeners are going to learn a lot, because I sure have. So, again, to make sure we remember the whole purpose of this is to bring awareness to your organization, not just the organization, but what you got, the actual work you guys are doing out in the community. So where can listeners go to learn more about the organization, get involved, contact you guys directly if needed, any events coming up, just anything and everything you guys want to share.
Yeah, so our Facebook page is going to be the most kind of up-to-date, day by day, and that's the Lighthouse, Gaston County CAC.
Okay.
Our website is www.hopeunitedgaston.com/the Lighthouse. And as you mentioned, you can explore all of the programs within the department throughout that website. And then I know I've mentioned, but we've got some fun things coming up for April. So Child Abuse Prevention Month, you'll see pinwheels throughout the county. Blue pinwheels is the symbol for Child Abuse Prevention Month. So really asking homeowners, businesses who would like to get pinned and display those pinwheels in their yard along with the yard sign, or businesses can display them in we've got some vases that have the pinwheels in them with a poster. We're also going to be able to collaborate with the Honey Hunters on an awareness night at the end of April. So some fun things. April 1st is Wear Blue Day, so everybody wear blue on Friday, April 1st for Child Abuse Prevention Month.
So that one I'm writing down because, I'll never remember that otherwise. So any final last words from either one of you, or anything you want to finish up with before we close this episode out? Because this has really been good.
I think for me, it's just, if anybody has questions or wants to help or wants to know more, reach out. We're happy to have conversations, talk, and I can't thank you enough for allowing us to be here today to be able to talk about this.
This has been really good. Deb, anything to add?
It's a fantastic program, and wish it wasn't needed, but since it is, the kids in Gaston County, the people in Gaston County are lucky it's here, and we really do appreciate the opportunity to come and talk about it.
Absolutely. Again, this is a great example of good work being done in Gaston County for the right reasons and circumstances that may not always be the best. So, as a longtime Gaston County citizen, I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. So, as usual, I'm going to finish up with my own book recommendation and kind of quote or thought for the week. And I'm going back to an author I have shared once before, a gentleman named Andy Andrews, who I really like. I think the first book I recommended was maybe way back early, episode 16 or 17, something like that. But he's written two short books called The Little Things and The Bottom of the Pool. They're very similar books, and he's kind of a personal development, positive attitude, outlook kind of guy. But there's two short reads I would recommend. Again, The Little Things and The Bottom of the Pool. And my quote for the week, I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce his name, is Lao Tzu, I think is how it's pronounced. And if I apologize to anyone out there who will send me an email and tell me I mispronounced that. But I like what he said, and this is obviously a long time ago. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So anything that we're trying to accomplish, any journey, any task, I'm not a person. I'd like to think it just start something and get it finished very quickly. But most things of significance and most things that really matter take longer than that. So keep that quote for you this week. Again, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So to our listeners out there today, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. Please spread the word if you can about the podcast, and please don't hesitate to contact us here at podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We're always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at the website, gastonsgreat.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Please follow us on our social media platforms as well. And you can rate the podcast if it's a 5-star rating. Elizabeth tells us that helps us get noticed. Again, thanks to Heather and Debbie for being our guests today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Amy Anderson and Elizabeth King from GSM Services and edited here locally by the Sumner Group. I'm your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.